That's right.
Hi, Gerald. So on this one, I left this one for last, and I did it actually on purpose because you are quite busy, and I really appreciate all the time that you've given me today to do the sessions. Just one thing I must say: if you like the videos as an employer, Gerald has got his own company where he does high-risk verifications, do fatal hazard protocol verifications, audits to make sure you as a company is doing the right thing the whole time and show you where is true and honest gaps. Give Gerald a call. I'm going to put his link so that you can contact him. He's really one of the leading investigators, leading inspectors that you can get in mining sector as well as the plant sector to give you honest feedback on how your operation is doing. So if you have a lot of incidents, a lot of hazards and a lot of gaps, give Gerald a call. If you want to add something there, you're welcome, Gerald.
No, thank you.
So on the safety officer, this one is close to my heart. The main reason why I opened the company is safety. When I lost, or not lost, when I got retrenched, I decided I'm not going to go and work for someone. I want to empower safety officers. And this was my second accreditation that I got to training people to become competent safety officers, not trained safety officers, competent safety officers. So the first one was as first aider. It was the easiest one to get out of that slump of not getting money. So from there, I opened up the safety officer course. I applied through QCTO. This course is fully aligned with QCTO, accredited by QCTO, and it's 120 credits. So if you look at the old Samtrack, that's 10 credits. If you look at ComSoc, there is not even credits allocated. It's not even an NQF level. So again, I didn't say my course is better, but my course is way better with workplace experience and practical experience. So I want to ask you a lot of questions that surrounding my training course. And also my course covers all the legal aspects of a safety officer. And I'm just breaking down the most important what a safety officer must do. So you will see I will ask you a knowledge module part, but it will correlate to workplace experience as well as practical experience, because a competent safety officer is not a qualified safety officer. So with that said, I'm going to talk about occupational health and safety fundamentals. That's the very first one. So from your role as a 213.1 engineer under the Mine Health and Safety Act, how does a properly trained and competent safety officer assist you in fulfilling your duties under Section 2 and Section 5 of the Mine Health and Safety Act?
So if you go and read the duties that is specified under Regulation 2 of the Act, Section 2 of the Act, you get scared.
Yeah.
So when, as part of the training that you do to become an engineer or a GCC engineer, you have to understand the regulation. And I asked myself the question, do I really want to do this? Because you do get scared. Because accountability stops at the 231.
Yes.
And I've sat in fatality investigations where the 3-1 manager, his answer to everything is, I appointed a competent 213.1 engineer.
Yes. So
that's the answer for everything. You can't sit there as an engineer and go say, I appointed a competent 261, 217 safety officer or anything like that. You can't say that. It stops with you.
Yeah.
And that is why a safety officer has such a big and important role to play to support the persons that carry legal appointments, especially the engineer, the 213.1 engineer. For you to fulfill your duties, you need a competent safety officer to act as the eyes and the ears in your organization. And that's why never have a safety officer report to a foreman.
Yes.
It's the worst thing you can do. You must have a direct link with your safety officers. They must know your doors are open for them to any time come and say, Meneer, I need to see you. There's critical things that I need to discuss with you. And give that person the time, because he's the eyes and the ears that helps you carry your legal appointment.
He must not appoint to ops manager, report to ops manager. No. He must not report to a GS even, directly to you, because he's covering you legally.
Absolutely.
Okay. Then under the section number 5.
So you need to identify unsafe situations early. And your safety officer has got legal inspections that they need to do, and that helps you to be proactive in the way that you deal with these situations. So safety officers are assigned a certain area of responsibility, and you need to make sure that the inspections are done religiously and you get your feedback. And you then have the responsibility to ensure there's actions. So if a safety officer brings you his report and say, I need feedback on this, give it the attention that it deserves, to make sure that you can demonstrate that you're assisting him in carrying out his responsibilities, which is your responsibilities as well. And very important, your safety officer helps you to verify controls in the field, to make sure that the controls or the systems you've put in place to address the risk identified actually works, and it strengthens your position to prove that there's due diligence in the way that you deal with situations and there's governance.
Is that like oversight of risk assessments,
Yes.
ensuring that the risk assessments is done, controls is followed?
Because he's the key. He's the key in that process. Remember, your safety officer is the person that is trained on the Act. So he should be well acquainted with the Act, and he helps you to connect the Act with the workplace. And that you do by means of risk assessment sessions. So a risk assessment cannot go forward if there's a safety officer who's not there. So I say
issue-based and basic.
Yeah. So lots of times they say, no, but the safety officer is the dark capture, and that's not what I'm saying. He's the person that guides the process. He nearly acts as a facilitator to guide the team and say, guys, well, remember, this is for instance, this is the hierarchy of controls. You can't just look at administrative controls.
Yes.
We need to start there. So is there any engineering control, or is there any way that we can actually eliminate this job, that we're not going to have this risk because we eliminated the risk? He's that person that guides the team in following the safety processes. Remember, Mine, Health and Safety Act. The engineer's job is 80% safety.
Yes.
That's why the safety officer is such an important thing.
So with my training that we've got a workplace module where you have to have a logbook and proof records of conducting risk assessments, of doing inspections. We'll touch that a bit later. How important is it to you as an engineer, knowing that you've got a safety officer who's done this kind of training, where he had actually a logbook, like in the old days with artisans, having logbooks completing certain tasks? How important is it for you to have someone like that versus somebody who's done ComSoc and Samtrack and they've only done it theoretically versus in the workplace?
So remember, you've got knowledge that you gain from courses, like the ones you mentioned, ComSoc. So it's knowledge. That knowledge does not add 1 ounce of value if the person cannot apply it.
Yes.
And a lot of times, I've seen it in my career many times, you get people with degrees. They have no idea how to apply the knowledge that they gained when doing the degree in the field. They just didn't make the link. And that's where a safety officer that has got that practical experience in completing logbooks, that can show by means of their logbook that they identify the safety issues in the section, that they understand the process of addressing these safety issues, that they were able to identify the gaps in your safety system where they saw, but here's a job that we've done, the guys didn't do it safely, but I picked up there's a problem with the procedure, it doesn't address this. Then I went in and said, but it was missing the risk assessment. And he came to you and said, Mr. Engineer, we actually need to go back to the risk assessment here, we missed this. Now you know this person understands the whole process that is explained by the Act, and he becomes your tool to say, great, carry on. Get a risk assessment team together, identify the team, let's arrange the session, do it, let's update the procedure, and let's do the coaching in the field. And update the PTOs that you need to update.
And that's what the logbooks solely focuses on. That's the activities where we want to ensure that safety officers is trained in practical and theoretical. Because when I came to the mines, I've said it before, and when I came to the mines, I did not even know what's lockout. On the power stations, we did not use lockout, we used control room as a lockout. So when I physically got on the mines, I was issued a lock, and it was said, please lockout here. So again, I saw there's a huge gap for safety officers without any valid field or any verified field experience. So from there, I'm going to look at the Mine Health and Safety Act and the OHSA Act. How important is it for a safety officer not only to know the Mine Health and Safety Act, but also the OHSA Act? Because under the OHSA Act, there's different regulations that is applicable to a mining operation.
So if you read your legal appointment, most legal appointments at the mine, you will see that you're not only appointed under the Mine Health and Safety Act. So the regulation under which you're appointed would be taken out of the the Health and Safety Act if you're on a mine.
Yes.
But it will state somewhere there that you also need to take cognizance of the OHSA Act. So the OHSA Act has got certain other regulations like the constructions regulations, machinery regulations that is a bit more in detail. The Mine Health and Safety Act is a very high level in some cases. It doesn't give a lot of detail in how to deal with things. But the Occupational Health and Safety Act gives you a little bit more detail in some aspects, like with lifting equipment, with machinery, with construction regulations. It gives you a bit more detail with boilers, how to deal with these issues and what is the requirement. Yes, the Mine Health and Safety Act has got the SANS system that supports it, but the SANS system supports both.
Yeah.
So you need to be aware of both acts, and you need to understand where, although it might not be applicable to your appointment, you cannot ignore it, and you will be held accountable for the regulations under the OHSA Act as well.
So I'm laughing just here by myself, and I'm thinking, so I'm actually better than a mining safety officer because I'm coming from construction sites. So thank you. So with that, I want to move over to the hazard identification and risk assessment process. We've touched it a little bit, and I just want to ask you, how does a safety officer support the engineering teams in conducting and reviewing risk assessments?
So first of all, the safety officer has got a holistic view and knowledge of the risk assessment system. Remember, there's 4 different kinds of risk assessments. It starts at the baseline. So your safety officer is part of all those processes. So they understand how the baseline risk assessment links to issue-based risk assessment. How issue-based risk assessment links to continuous risk assessments. So they understand that whole line, and they will be able to identify also what risk register needs to be updated. So sometimes you find that your risk registers don't talk to each other, and the DMR is they like to look at that. So they will always say, no, show us your baseline risk assessment. You just want to start at the continuous risk assessment. Oh, where did you identify this in your baseline that this area has got this risk? And where did you take that risk and now do the issue-based risk assessment that supports that aspect now in a bit more detail? Where does your issue-based risk assessment require continuous risk assessment to be done? Like what Denko calls your level 1 and level 2 risk assessment. So your safety officer understands that process. Secondly, your safety officer is closer to what is happening in the field. So they will identify where the gaps are, and they will be able to go and correlate and go and look back and say, I need to go and check that risk assessment for this task if we actually covered it. Remember the DMR and any inspector doesn't want to look at a procedure.
He wants a risk assessment.
He wants a risk assessment.
Department of Labour, even just a general shop here in town, they want risk assessment. Especially the issue based from the Department of Labour. They want the issue based.
So, and that's where your safety officer is your link. So they've got access to your systems. So they are issued with a computer. They're issued with access to your intranet in your organization. They've got a view of those risks. They know what is there. They know which one should cover what, so that they can understand where the gaps are. They also know when are they supposed to be reviewed. Because a lot of times you find that risk assessments are there, but they're 5 years old. They're not representative anymore. They've expired, and they are the person that can help you to manage that you don't fall in that gap. Also, I always found that the best person to put a team together to do a risk assessment is your safety officer, because they also get to know the people. If they are worth their salt, they will not be sitting in the office the whole time. They will also be in the field. They will know if we want to do a risk assessment on this task, that and that and that guy is the guys that's going to give the knowledge that's going to help us to do a proper job.
We talked about the 80-20 scenario in the previous session. 80-20 for a safety officer is very important.
Yeah.
80% field-based and then 20% office-driven. So it's very important that you must know your people for risk assessment.
Me and you work for a GM that said if a safety officer has an office, he's worried.
Yeah.
You must have a desk somewhere in the open plan.
They don't want the safety officer to have a desk. They want him to look at the system. Also, one thing that we have to touch is after the incident and after the investigation. How important is it for a safety officer to review the risk assessment, review that all the let's say root causes and all the shortcomings does talk to the risk assessment? How important is it for him to go and verify?
You want your safety officer to challenge the assumptions that you make. So they actually are part of the testing process. So if an incident happens, they must go and test the system to say, but where did we address this?
Yeah.
If we addressed it, why did it happen? Why did the team not know about it? Did we miss that portion we stated in the risk assessment was never translated into the procedure. A lot of time I've seen that as well. You've got a super duper risk assessment, but if you look at the procedure, you can't link the two documents.
Yes.
So there's something was missed. So they will go and test that for you.
And usually the employees only get the procedure for the job.
You know how many times I've seen people try to do reverse engineering?
Yeah.
So they've got this procedure. They don't have a risk assessment. They say, no, well, go take the procedure and go and do a risk assessment.
Doesn't work.
Doesn't work that way, because you're not going to identify the real risks and hazards of the job, and you're not going to identify the right controls, because you're trying to take the recipe that might be flawed, or the product that might be flawed, and you're trying to make a recipe from that.
Yes.
It's already flawed, so your recipe is now going to be flawed as well.
Another important thing for a risk assessment is the safety officer has got the correct terminologies. What is a hazard? What is a risk? So when the teams do deviate from, let's say, falling is the hazard. No, that's the consequence. So tell me, what is the real hazard? So that's where the safety officer can get structure to a risk assessment, because he's actually the trained person in identifying the terminology side. Am I correct in saying that?
Absolutely. And things like, for instance, where people frequently get it wrong to understand the overall risk rating, where you have to rate a risk without any controls, which is your PMC rating, your maximum possible
worst case scenario.
But then you can't use that risk in for instance, rating a job.
Yes.
That just gives you an idea of how important is this risk assessment.
How severe is it?
Yes. Now you go and put your controls in. Now you do a residual risk rating. Now that tells you what is the actual risk of the job if all the controls that you've identified are in place and is working. And that then becomes the actual risk of the job.
Yes.
If people get that wrong, for instance, you find that jobs that actually do not carry that bigger risk becomes your high-risk verification jobs that you verify, and the ones that really carry the risk is missed.
Yes.
And it's because of that understanding not being there. Now your safety officer guides the team with that.
So I want to go back to when I was still working as a safety officer. One of our clients, I'm not going to mention names, it's quite embarrassing, but so what happened is he came to do a high-risk verification on us doing a PC4000 shutdown. And when he got there, we were busy removing the side frames. And he says, but why are you guys doing a PTO? Why are you doing high-risk verification? This. And he asked a lot of questions, and it was valid questions, I must say. But when we started having an argument, he said my PTO schedule was flawed that my supervisors drew up. And I asked him, but why? He said, no, you cannot have a CTI based on a residual risk after all the controls. You must have it before the controls, because let's say everything fails. I said, no, but that's the risk. The risk is if everything fails, what's it? So we had a huge discussion saying a CTI must be drawn up before the risk rating or before the controls, or versus it must be done after the controls. And at the end of the day, he actually stopped the whole operation, the whole shutdown, saying we were incorrect of doing a CTI after the controls. And we had a huge fight until his engineering manager came and said, no, but the contractor, me now, is actually correct. You must have your CTI after all the controls. And what's the worst case after all those controls is in place? Because it's your work as a site manager, as a supervisor, safety officer, to ensure the controls is in place, and then only you see the residual risk. So it's important to have a safety officer that's competent, who knows the differences, and also who are, you said at one time, you must be
you must force your way.
Yeah, you must force your way and prove that you can save your people's life. You used the word a few years back that you must be not aggressive, but you must be able to portray what's the actual things.
You must be assertive. A safety officer needs to be assertive.
Yes.
And just to maybe also further on your argument about the residual risk. So every job has got risk. If we want to focus on the raw risk, we won't do anything.
Yes, we'll never work. Yes.
It's because you put controls in place that you actually do the job.
Yes.
So if there's a control that can cause a fatality, a risk that causes a fatality, and you don't have a control, you cannot do the job.
Yes.
You must find the control, how you're going to do the job safely.
Until you can manage the fatality risk.
That is why, lots of times you get a team together and say, no, we can't do this job, it's unsafe. I say, no, that's part of why you are competent people. You need to identify through your risk assessment, how are we going to do it safely?
Yeah.
And you're right, we're not going to do the job if it's unsafe.
Yes.
We're going to do the job after we put in all the controls to make it safe.
That's why you've got the right of refusal according to the Mine Health and Safety Act. So you've got that. You can refuse to do a job, but don't come just with a problem. A safety officer is not a problem issuer. He's a problem solver.
Yeah.
So when you have a job that's let's say the risk rating is too high and you cannot do it, involve your safety officer. Get your safety officer's opinion. And that safety officer must be trained, must be competent, they must have workplace experience. Because you cannot expect a safety officer who's got no experience to solve a risk for you. That doesn't matter, that doesn't help you as an organization. And that's why I'm saying I don't believe in Samtrack, I don't believe in Consult, because they don't give you the actual workplace experience. The only way how you will be able to solve residual risk and make it lower is with valid experience in the field.
Yeah. And you want your safety officer to own the risk. So I don't want a safety officer that goes around and stops all the jobs.
Yes.
So he just stops the job and walk away.
Yeah.
What value did he add?
Nothing.
He had no, he didn't add any
He stopped
value.
operation, that's
I
what.
want him to stop the job, and then I want him to become part of the solution. And say, okay guys, stop, what we're doing is not safe. Let's get our risk assessment out. Guys, how are we going to do this job safely? Now he becomes the person that actually improves the job, that it goes forward safely.
So
he's done his job.
So I always say a safety officer's job is to stop jobs, definitely, but also to give solutions and get the job back on track as soon as possible.
Yeah.
It doesn't help you stop a service for 12 hours because you feel empowered. You must give value-added information to make sure nobody gets fatally injured, because that's your job. Your job is to prevent fatals. That's how I see it. And I'm talking about fatals for you as a learner, so that you can understand what's your responsibility as a future safety officer. So I'm going to go over to the inspections. According to the DMR, Mine Health and Safety Act, it's the only area in all of the acts that specifies you must have a 30-day, a 40-day, and a 45-day and a 90-day inspection. The OHSA Act doesn't say. The OHSA Act says regular inspections. The construction regulations say the same story, same as machinery. The Mine Health and Safety Act is the most harsh, prescriptive on inspections, and that's why my course covers both laws. The Samtrack only covers Occupational Health and Safety Act. Consult only covers Mine Health and Safety Act. Mine is a combined one, and that's why it's so long, the course, and that's why it's got so many credits. So again, under the inspections, how do you set up a safety officer plan inspection schedule from 30 to a 90-day inspection to make sure that your inspection schedule covers everything in your area of responsibility?
So first of all, you must make sure that the span of control of your safety officer is practically executed. You cannot give a safety officer such a big area that he cannot cover the area with his inspections that he needs to conduct. So then you must help him. I don't want to give him structure. He must design his structure, and you have a review of his structure. In how is he going to divide his inspections so that he covers his 30-day inspection and he covers his own area in 90 days. So once he's done that, your eye comes in, is he giving the enough time to the right area? So you might have areas that's quite involved, and you need to cut that in smaller slices. So he will do his inspections on those areas, and then there might be areas that's big, but there's very little activity happening, and he can cover a bigger area in a scheduled inspection. So very important that happens. You have to monitor that. So you must make sure that your safety officer submits his inspection on time and you check it. We must remember that we are all human.
Yes.
If you are not checked, you will tend to take chances.
Yeah.
So as a safety officer, don't feel not trusted if you are checked.
Yeah.
It's part of the process.
Yes.
And it keeps everybody honest. And it's part of the engineer's duty. Secondly, you also check the engineer.
Yeah.
So you submit your inspections, and unfortunately, a lot of times you bring it and say, signs. Doesn't look at what you said. There's no action on your inspections, and that's where you, as a safety officer, must become assertive.
Yeah.
And you must also say, but Meneer,
look at it.
I've reported this now twice.
It's
not being resolved. I need your assistance. And you have to be respectful, but you have to be assertive.
Yeah.
And if you as an engineer finds that a problem, you need to go and understand your legal accountability.
Look at yourself.
You don't understand that. You need to understand that those inspections is probably some of the most valuable insights you get. And if you can show that you are supporting those inspections, you are acting on those inspections, you are demonstrating a working safety system.
Yes.
So just as important as PTOs are in our previous discussion, safety officer inspections is just as critical.
Yeah.
And that you close the loop. Make sure that you action these things.
So from yourself now, what will you feel if a safety officer comes and says, my 30-day inspections is the MHSA store? Instead of making that a 90-day because it's not a high-risk area, there's pipe walls and everything, how will you feel if you focus the whole time on low-risk areas on his 30-day inspection?
Well, it can happen, but that's where you need to coach him, because that is a telltale that your safety officer doesn't understand the risk. And you need to help him to understand where he must focus on, and his process of identifying the CTIs, his critical task inventory was flawed.
Yeah. And
it's no use you just go off on him. You need to coach him, because if he doesn't understand that principle, the rest of his work is probably also going to be flawed. So guide him, assist him to understand 80-20, what we spoke about earlier. Where is your 20%, which is your highest risk that's going to cause 80% of your accidents? That's where you want to focus 80% of his attention. The lower risk things, that is 20% of the risk, must get that amount of time. You can't get more
only
time.
Only the 90-day inspection.
Exactly. And things like that. Housekeeping. It's important, but how big is the risk in MSDSs, all those things, it's easy to check, and it's not things that goes out of line very quickly.
Yes. Same with office inspections.
Yes.
You don't have to do an office inspection every 30 days. You don't have to go and verify the lights and the plugs every 30 days. That's why there is electricians that does their tagging inspections. So you must identify, you know what, I'm going to do an office inspection once every 90 days. Let's say, for instance, now my workshop cleanliness, that will be on a 45, because I'm there daily, so I have to do it daily. But actual proof is 45 days. But my machines that's under my operation, I must go and check the fire extinguisher, I must check the brakes, I must check, let's say, the lights. You're not going to check the oil levels, that's why we've got mechanics. but just to oversight. You do your oversight inspection on a 30-day basis. Your lifting equipment is important for you. You're not going to go and check the lifting equipment itself, but you're going to check, is there pre-uses for all the lifting equipment by the stores? Does the storeman sign off? Does it get returned? That's your inspection as a safety officer. When you walk past, let's say in the plant, and there's a guard off, you must be able to identify there's a risk, there's a guard off. Somebody's going to get crushed, somebody's going to get pulled in. So that's to improve your inspections on a 30 day. You must focus on the highest areas is 30 days. So my way of doing a plan inspection schedule, high risk is 30 days, medium risk is 45, and the low risk areas is 90 days.
Yeah.
That's how I've done it in the past.
And it should be it should actually be indicated already on your CTI. So on your CTI document, you will have your safety officer inspections.
Yes.
And you will say this one requires a 30-day inspection.
Yes.
So what's nice about that, you link your whole safety system to your critical task
Yes.
analysis that you've done. And from that, you can demonstrate why do you spend a certain amount of attention and effort on certain things. That when things can also go wrong in low-risk areas.
Yes.
But now, if you are questioning, but why did your safety officer only do 90-day inspection on this area? You can prove a reasonable process that you went through when you identified your frequency of inspections.
Yes. So now I want to talk about the inspections itself. For me, that's a very important one, and that's part of the workplace experience and your practical modules, as well as the knowledge modules. In your opinion, a safety officer that does inspection, we spoke about the PTOs, the same story. How important is evidence when a safety officer does his inspection? First of all, the evidence portion. Then the second area is the tracking. Is a safety officer inspection concluded when the engineer signs off the inspection? Or is it concluded when the closeout has been done? So I'm going to use the example. I've done the inspection today, Gerald. By the plant section, I identified the guards as off. I spoke to the supervisors. We demarcated the area to make sure it's safe. Now, with that, I've given a pivot job guard to manufacture a new guard because the guard is missing, and it's going to take 6 weeks to get that guard due to the procurement process. So, can you please sign off? I've done my inspection. I've done everything, so I'm done with my job. Is that the correct process, or how do you see a process being closed?
Okay, so a process is being closed when the risk is addressed. Okay, so that's the key. So when a safety officer does his inspection, first of all, you know the inspection that you've done. When we work together, it's a proper report with photos of the deviation found that one can really see this is the problem. Then there's immediate action. So what did you do immediately to address the risk? Let's use your example. There's a guard that is not adequate. So that guard not being adequate, there's a definite risk. You can't wait six weeks before you fix or address the risk. So there must be an immediate action.
Yes.
So that I expect the safety officer to have determined and put in place already. So immediately called the supervisor to the area that's responsible for this area, and make sure that the supervisor identified a reasonable and practical control that we can immediately put in place. Put barricading in place, or put something in place, lock out the machine, do something to address the risk. Now we say, okay, that's the immediate response. Now we're going to do the permanent response that's now going to give longevity to our solution. That is where now there's a procurement process or something happening and a due date, the responsible person and a due date. So when is that risk 100% sorted? When the permanent solution was completed.
And whose responsibility is to ensure that it was done, the closeout? Whose responsibility?
It's the safety officer's responsibility.
But why?
It's his report.
The supervisor is now there, so why? I'm asking now, as a safety officer who doesn't want to do my job.
Because he identified the risk, now owns the risk.
That's
so it's the same with me. If I do an inspection and I identify a risk, I cannot leave that area before I didn't do something about the risk. I identified it, I own it. So the safety officer identifies it, he owns the problem. It doesn't mean he needs to do it
But it
doesn't mean he needs to go and fix it.
He
needs to make sure
it gets done.
that it gets done.
Yeah.
And that's why the report will come to the engineer. The engineer will look at his immediate solution. If the engineer feels that that's not adequate, it's the engineer's opportunity to give input. To say, hey, Stephen, I don't think it's adequate. I think go back and make sure the machine is blocked out. Don't stop it. Or he can say, no, I'm happy with what you've done. That's fine. Okay, this is your suggestion, because I want the safety officer to give a suggestion on how we're going to solve it.
Yeah.
Because I'm also testing his competence, and it gives me an opportunity to coach him. So I say, okay, maybe we need to think about this and this as well.
Yes.
You make sure your solution is now robust. Who is the best person to assign the response? It's the engineer.
Yes.
All the people report to him. So he said, no, you're wrong for me. This is the guy that's accountable for this. And I want it done by then.
Yeah.
Now the pivot job card gets issued, and there's a definite date. Whether it's a pivot job card, whether it's it doesn't matter what safety system it is. There's an instruction issued with a due date and the responsible person. There is maybe 4 or 5 safety officers report to the engineer. I'm not going to keep track of everything.
Yes.
I expect a safety officer to provide me feedback. I don't want feedback when it is past due.
Yeah.
A week beforehand, I want the safety officer just goes to and say, yeah, he still hasn't done anything about it. I reminded him. Now I will also remind. And I will say, that task is assigned to you. When are you doing this? The due date is then, make sure it's done before the due date. When it's done, I want the safety officer to go and check was it done properly.
And take a photo.
Yes. Now I've closed everything out. Problem, immediate solution, permanent solution, completed. Done.
So the people doesn't have pivot systems. You get something called a deviation register from your safety officer. Same as a PTO schedule, same as a plan inspection schedule, you've got a deviation register. On that deviation register, you've got from the very first deviation, you've got 2 years back, 5 years back, up into the last one today. And it will show what's still open, what still needs to be done, and who's responsible. How important do you feel is a deviation register when you do not have a pivot job card system? That's part of my resources I'm giving in the safety officer course. And I want to make sure that the learner do understand that when you have a deviation register, you have to upkeep that register, make sure it's up to date, and make sure from your point of view as a safety officer that you do close out all the deviations that you have identified. Like you said, you identified your own.
So we must remember that supervisors, safety officers, engineers are all appointed under the regulation. There's legal appointments. So that we need to understand all of us are accountable and will be held accountable under the law.
Yeah.
So a safety officer has got a role to play. And part of his role is to ensure there's safe workplaces. He's part of he's a gear in this big machine.
Yeah.
So the deviation register becomes the safety officer's proof that I've carried out my legal accountability. I did my job. Number 1, it's his proof. Number 2, it's his system to ensure that he doesn't miss things that he's identified, that it doesn't get lost in the cracks and it goes unactioned. Because remember, you've identified the risk. It's there.
Yes.
Because you identify it, you make yourself responsible, you make the responsible supervisor responsible, and you make the engineer responsible. So all
the accountability is
everybody's responsible. You saw it, you're accountable.
Yeah.
Yes, you've got all these people to support you to solve it. But if you don't go back and follow through with your system, the gap will stay open and you will be guilty as well as all the other people will be implicated.
Yes.
And now we're not working as a team, and that's why it's so important to me that my safety officers and the supervisors must work together as a team.
Yes.
A supervisor must not feel offended if a safety officer brings something under his attention in his area of responsibility. He is somebody that's there to assist him to carry out his duty. The same thing, a safety officer must not feel offended if the supervisor wants to discuss the solution
and give pushback and say no, but it's not.
Debate it. How are we going to do it? Because that generates understanding of the problem. The safety officer, remember the supervisor normally is in that technical field.
Yes.
He's got technical skills and experience. Safety officer might have a limited amount of technical experience. He should have some. But that's where the safety officer sharpens his skills. With that debate, if you must defend your position, you must explain it. Explanation, first of all, helps you to reason your own process and check your own thought processes. But now you also learn from that person. And by the safety officer not just accepting everything, also giving pushback, you sharpen both those people. So eventually, you get a very good solution, and you get two sharp guys that really makes, or it might be ladies, but you get two people that really adds and makes a difference to the safety of your area.
So I want to use the example as Agner. He was quite aggressive in his sections. If you have a deviation in his section, he gets agitated, he gets upset. But it's the initial agitation, the initial upset. But when he sits and he goes through the report and he sees the photos, he will say, you know what, yeah, Stephen, I've been wrong. You know what, let's fix it. So I've learned how to sort out that person. You have to look at what the supervisor likes and how the supervisor, how can I say, takes constructive deviations. So what I've done with Agner in the past is I will say, hey, John, we've got the inspection, let's go and walk with you. Let's go and fix what we see. So Agner, he wanted to be there when you do the inspection. And it's fair, it's fine, because it can be resolved immediately. But now Pumlani, he doesn't have time. He likes to be on the job, and you remember, he wants to fix the machine with the artisans. And it's fine, that's his kind of supervision, and that's where his strong point is. So with Agner, yes, John, let's go and have a look, let's do the inspection, and then they usually fix the deviation there and then. So you can take a photo of the deviation, you can take a photo of the corrective action, and it's sorted out. Whereby Pumlani, he doesn't want to go with you, he doesn't have time. So he will say, go and do your inspection. I don't mind if you go into my section. It's fine, my section is open for you. Just tell me what's going on before you go to Andre or before you go to Gerald. I want to know what's the deviations. And then at the end, it's a little bit a longer way, but at the end of your inspection, you go to him and say, Pumlani, this is the gaps. This is what I've identified. Let's quickly get a solution. And then you and Pumlani will walk there and then only act on it. So it's double the work, definitely, for you as a safety officer. But you must learn how to manage the supervisors in your area. Nobody is exactly the same as what you are. So again, like you said, know the people, know the processes, and also give a little bit pushback when they fight against your deviation. Definitely you must, because you cannot just keep quiet, but also you must be willing to flex and understand why it's like that. So let's say there's an opening in the floor, like by a manhole. You must understand, okay, but they have barricaded. There is signs, there is everything. So yes, the manhole cover, let's say, got lost or it got bended when a truck drove over it. You must understand, you cannot eliminate the risk, definitely. But they've got engineering controls, they've got barricading, they've got signs with administration. So you must accept that they are not perfect. It's not a chocolate factory, I always say it. So accept that. The safety also must be able to flex away from engineering only, administrative only. Look at the bigger picture as a safety officer under your inspections.
Yeah, and it's very important to me if a safety officer comes with inspections or issues that he identified and the supervisor doesn't know about, I get worried, because then I feel that now I must become the channel to go and tell the supervisor to fix it. So then the value of the safety officer becomes a problem, and then I worry that the safety officer sees himself as a policeman, and that's not his job. He's a very important and integral part of the machine to run the mine. So I want him, and if you actually go and look at the requirement, it says the safety officer must bring it under the attention of the direct legal appointed person. That's the supervisor. So I want him to, his first point of contact, supervisor. Make sure the supervisor carries knowledge, was part of the solution. Now it comes to me, if I ask the supervisor, the point that Stephen, or the issue that Stephen mentioned in his report, he must, no, I know about it, this is what we're doing about it. Now I've tested the system, there's communication between the two guys, I'm going to sleep better because my machine is working.
Yes.
It's working like it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
And rightly, like you said, the safety officer is the person that must have the, I call it emotional intelligence, to work with different supervisors.
Yeah.
We must understand the stresses and pressure that supervisors are under. Supervisors have got people reporting to them that contributes to stress. They've got production figures that they must deliver, or availabilities they must deliver to management. It's a stressful position.
Then they've got the engineer who also wants his reports.
Exactly.
And
so a safety officer with that higher level of emotional intelligence to deal with the different personalities and to identify and understand how can I best assist the supervisor so that the supervisor can do his job as effectively as possible. That person is his value, his weight in gold is worth it.
Remember, you are not reporting to the supervisor, but you are assisting. You are not reporting to a, let's say, safety lead, but you are assisting them to do their duties. And it's key that you must understand you are assisting them. That's very important as a safety officer.
And that's where the good safety officers I work with, I could trust them to know that if there's a high risk job and they are there to verify, I know that I could depend on them and trust them that that job will go down safely.
Yeah.
It will be stopped when it needs to be stopped. The controls that needs to be in place will be in place because I know that they are assertive, but they have mastered the skill of dealing with people.
I must say, if we look at the track history, what we've had, we had the best operating site. We had the least amount of incidents. We operated 5 years without the LTI. We had operated 5 years without the MTI. So that shows if your safety officer and your supervisor, as well as the engineer, and at that point we still had the operations manager, Colin, who was fully supportive of safety. If you have those 5 key links, where a safety officer, safety rep, engineer, supervisor, and the ops manager, if all of them are seen, you will not have any incidents. The proof is in the pudding. We've proven it at Tweefontein versus other operations. I'm not saying other Glencore operations, other operations I've worked in the industry and as well as you. As soon as everybody takes their responsibility and you know what, I'm going to do my best in my position and not see Gerald wants to steal my job or Stephen wants to become a supervisor. Stephen cannot be a supervisor. He's a safety officer. He wants to be a safety officer. And the supervisor can become a safety officer. He doesn't want to be a safety officer. He wants to be a technical supervisor. As soon as you understand that, and you understand we are here to help one another completing one goal of getting people home safely, operation will be perfect in my opinion. And that's part of the inspections.
Yeah, and you know what? Everybody enjoys their job. And because you enjoy what you do, because you're successful, it drives performance.
Yes.
And it becomes a high performance team.
Yes. And also, you don't want to steal one another's jobs. You can't. And that's one thing I always tell people when I was still in the field. I do not want your job. I don't want to be a supervisor. Honestly, I don't want to. I want to save lives. That's my work. Your work is to get that machine in production and to have people competent and safe in your area. So help me help you to get those people safe and save lives. So I'm not here to steal your job. I'm here to tell you what's your deviations, fix your deviations. I'm here to help you solve the deviation. If you want me to speak to management for a new manual, I will do that if you do not come right. But tell me what I must do, then I will help you. And vice versa. When I tell you what's wrong, don't see it as Stephen wants to steal your job. See it as Stephen wants to help you save people's lives.
Yeah. And the safety officer feeds the system. So the safety officer makes sure that my safety system is a very accurate picture of the actual safety condition on the shop floor. That it's a representation of what's actually happening.
So that's from your inductions to your PTOs, plan inspections, risk assessments, and your annual medicals inductions. A safety officer could key parts in all of them. Even though HR does book the people for medicals and inductions in the bigger operations, definitely HR does that, but you must oversee that the people is competent and trained and medically fit to enter the work area. Same with the inspections. There's a lot of areas where the safety officer doesn't have direct input, like the medicals inductions and licensing, doesn't have direct input on the bigger operations. But you must make sure that the operator is competent, is trained. That's part of your inspections. You can inspect the, let's say, license register to make sure nobody gets a machine where they will not operate and trained to do so.
Yep.
Yeah. So now we spoke a lot about behavior-based, and this whole thing actually covered behavior-based as well. But if you have a safety officer who's always a policeman instead of somebody who's helping the system, do you think people will trust a safety officer when he walks into the work area? Same as with engineering and supervisor. How important is it for a safety officer to be behavior-based driven, to help people to fix deviations when he sees something, not just going around to the engineer and say, I want this guy suspended? How important is that?
So first of all, safety officer has got a big role to play in building the right culture in an organization. So if he becomes a rule enforcer, so he's a policeman, he will only be effective if he's there.
Yeah.
So that will mean he will have to be at every job the whole time. So he's going to be effective for a little while in a small little area, but very quickly he's going to be shown to be an ineffective safety officer. So a safety officer that focuses on correcting behavior. And remember, behavior is driven by what's important to me.
Yeah.
So what's important to me influences my behavior. If something is not important to me, it will not influence my behavior on a long-term basis. It might change it for a little bit because now I'm scared of you that you have. But when you leave, I'm going to go back to my old way of doing things. Yeah. If the safety officer focuses on behavior, changing behavior of people by making the link between what's important to them and doing things in the right way. He's building a safety culture. And then the safety officer becomes there's a good word, the conductor. I nearly want to call him the medium through which safety is conducted, because he's got a positive impact in it. And now what he does has a long-term effect, because he's not only changing this job, because he focuses on the behavior gets copied to other jobs, and now people start applying those things that they've now changed in how they see things and how they do things to other jobs. Now, whether he's there or not, he's made a positive impact and he's changing, and that will be indicated in your safety stats.
Yes.
So if you've got a lot of incidents and accidents, you need to question your safety officer's effectiveness and try and understand, why is he not effective? How can you assist him to become more effective?
And that's when you do a PTO on a safety officer.
Exactly, in how he engages with the team. And does he understand the behaviors that is driving people's behavior, or the aspects that's driving people's behavior? And again, that's why emotional intelligence is such an important part of a safety officer's skills that he needs to have.
I always say a safety officer is not a superhero. That's what I always say. So a safety officer doesn't know everything. He doesn't know all the laws, he doesn't know all the rules, he doesn't know why people's doing certain things unsafely according to him. So the only way that safety officers can get better in his job or her job is to take the criticism from the employees, because employees can see his fault on the floor. And that's a behavior that he has to change, not only the employees. He can get input from his supervisor, like the chief safety officer or his engineer. And he must not take, he must not take it personally. He must improve that behavior that he has got wrong. Usually a safety officer, what the fuck do you do? This is not safe, stop the job. And instead of, guys, I see you working without glasses. Why? Explain to me why. And there will most probably be a reason. And then you will get the effect when you approach a job site. You don't see people picking up their glasses. I worked with the engineer Gerald van Rensburg, and I can say it openly. When he walks to a site, people will not even focus on picking up their glasses in the dragline division. They will not even focus on that, because Gerald knows there's no risk of them not wearing a glass. So he will rather look at, why is their fingers close to a gear, for instance. So he won't even talk about that. And that's where you have the behavior-based safety, that people know you know what, he's not going to fight about nitty-gritties. He's going to fight about us working unsafely. And that's where they focus on working safely, because the behavior is not on focusing on the glass. Because now you put on a safety spec and you bring back your hand and now again gets pinched. So again, it's behavior based. If you enforce the real rules and the real concerns in the area, the real risks, then most probably you will have less incidents. I can remember a few years back, somebody told me, I don't understand why you became a safety officer, because you let go of so many unsafe things. I said, it's unsafe for you because you're not doing it. If you look at the person, he knows the hazards, he knows the controls. So for him not wearing a glass, for instance, or for electrician, auto electrician, not wearing a glove while installing thin wires, I know the risk, he knows the risk, so I'm leaving him. He knows I'm leaving him because it's something nitty-gritty, versus somebody going under a suspended late. So it was always said to me, Stephen, I've never understood why you became a safety officer. And my answer always is, how many fatals have you had? How many incidents have you had in your area versus my area? My area is incident free. I had a fatal when I was still a learner. So again, that's how I see behavior-based is enforcing behavior that's critical and leaving the small nitty-gritty things and not pester people about small nitty-gritty things, because people's going to get upset and they're going to swear and they're going to feel that you're only there to do these things.
And don't focus on the person, focus on the problem.
Yes.
So try to solve the problem, not try to address the person. You're going to rub people up the wrong way. And the NK is not going to support you.
Yeah.
Because remember, you need also support of people to be effective in any job you do.
Yeah.
And you touched an aspect that's very important, that unfortunately we get knee-jerk reactions. Somebody pinches their finger, and we have this knee-jerk reaction that everybody must wear gloves. So now, it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to do an inspection, you're walking through an area, you must have gloves on.
Yes.
It's a knee-jerk reaction of people not understanding the risk and how the control works. If you drive the people's understanding of risk in ensuring they can identify the risk and they can effectively manage that risk with effective control, then you've achieved what you were meant to achieve. If you're trying to enforce a blanket rule of everybody will wear gloves when they go past this point, you actually missed the boat.
Yes.
And now you are training puppets that just have to comply to rules they don't even understand why they need to comply.
So a few years back we had an incident where a lady got degreaser in her eyes. I'm not going to mention the area, but she got degreaser in her eyes. And in the investigation the whole time they were hampering on her. Why did you not wear your gloves? Why did you not wear your gloves? And the more she says it forks up, the more they say it's not an excuse. Now, why do you not look at other controls? Because now PPE is the last resort. And the more you as a safety officer try to defend, they say, but we're going to remove you from the investigation. So at the end of the day, the whole thing was identified. Rather than wearing gloves, use a face shield because it doesn't fog up. Use a dust mask that goes out, a respirator that goes to the side, so that you do not have fog in your eyes itself. Yeah. So instead of focusing on that, they spent the whole day on fighting why she was not wearing gloves. What is his key purpose under this investigation?
Well, in my view, in an investigation, you want to try and find the truth. You want to find the facts. As soon as you base any remedial actions on things that's not factual, your investigation is going to be flawed. You're probably going to have a repeat. So, to me, the safety officer is there to first of all guide the process in as far as the way that it should be done. So there is various methods, one of which is the ICAM method. So you want the safety officer to understand the ICAM method because there's a chairman, but he also needs guidance and reminding and saying, yeah, we missed this one or we missed that one, to make sure that the process is followed properly. Yeah. If you, for instance, fail to consider certain defenses, you might miss one that failed and you miss something that led to the action. Because the accident, remember, accident is a chain event. So what you need to do is ensure that you break the chain that led to the event by effective control. And if you, for instance, only focus on the person that got hurt, and you don't focus, also give attention to the systems, the organization, all these other factors, you're going to miss factors that led to the incident. So the safety officer is an important part in that, in the process, and to ensure the process is properly followed. He's also effective, especially if the incident happened in this area, to ensure that we base the findings on actual facts and not on assumptions. It's the worst thing. Look, sometimes you have to assume certain things because there's no way to find what actually happened, especially, unfortunately, in fatalities. Lots of times in fatality, if the person that died is the only person that was there. So now you don't have all the facts, so you must choose the most likely reason why something happened. But again, the safety officer knows the area, he knows the person, so he is in a good position to help you and be part of the team that gets to the closest possible cause.
Closest cause, not the root cause, but the closest cause. Now, you can remember, this is when you just moved over to one operation. We had the ICAM investigation, and they were hampering the whole time on the safety officer and the site manager. Why was the site manager not in the area where the guy got injured? Why was the safety officer outside the gate by another vehicle accident? At the end of the day, they wanted to remove the safety officer from site and the site manager from site, but they did not focus on what was the root cause. Why did the person's finger got pinched by the bed? So now I want to say, what is the authority of a safety officer to challenge a root cause and the ruling from investigation? I know what we did and now it was resolved, but if you can just give the learners some pointers on how to challenge findings.
So, and that is where it comes to competent safety officers again. So a competent safety officer will be able to reason logically, considering all the factors that were part of the incident or the situation that happened. If he's got a good knowledge of the actual work area and he's got a good understanding of what actually happened, he will be able to have a logical input. Unfortunately, you must be very careful to try and apply blanket rules in all cases. It doesn't work. And then you're also missing the purpose. But normally that happens when investigations are focused on finding a scapegoat. So as soon as that becomes the focus of an investigation, I'd rather walk out. I'd rather not be part of it because it's not going to be successful.
It's not going to give the cause.
It's not going to, and it's not going to end up with the right actions. So if everybody in the team is not focused on understanding why it happened and how can we prevent a repeat, if that is not the sole reason for the investigation, you're going to miss it. And that's where I feel the safety officer is a lot of time a good voice of reason. And sometimes it's good to ask the safety officer, but what do you think? What is your view? And listen, because remember that person is often in the area and that person has got the right background. He sees it from the safety aspect. So he's got a good understanding of both sides. Where sometimes the supervisor will have his position and the engineer will have his position, the operation guy will have his position. The safety officer brings all of that together and can give a fair input and a fair view of all the processes working together. So, there's a reason why safety officers has to be part of investigations in the area. There's a good reason for that. It's because of that aspect that they bring in to make sure they give a balanced view of what happened. And very important, keep the aim of the process. Remember, the safety officer at the end of the day is not responsible for the area. There's a supervisor, there's an engineer. He is responsible to help you to make your safety system work like it's supposed to. So if you are focused on solving the problem and not trying to pinpoint the person that's guilty, your safety officer will be able to add value. If that's not your aim,
and you want
probably you're going to find the safety officer as seeing as he's pushing back. He's not pushing back, he's just trying to help you to get to the right place.
Yeah.
Process.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now, as a safety officer, when you're in the investigation from the DMR side during a fatal and so forth, how difficult is it when they look at your systems and your systems have failed? Like, let's say, your deviation register or your pivot job code system, or even just the communication that haven't been done. There was instruction, but it haven't been done. How deep does the DMR scrutinize your safety system throughout a fatal, life-changing event, even just a lost time injury?
We must remember that the safety system is the legislative part of the law. So the law is descriptive in you must have certain things in place, which is driven by your safety system. So your safety system becomes the evidence to prove that you've done what the law said that you were supposed to do. So if that is found lacking or there's gaps in, it actually shows you that you have not done what you were supposed to do under the law. In other words, you are guilty. You don't do what the law says, you're guilty. So the safety officer is the custodian. He's not the owner of the system, but he's the person that drives it and puts his hand up and says, it's not working, it's not working, it's not working. Who's accountable for that? It's the engineer. So the engineer must make sure that that system is working. So if the system is not working, the engineer doesn't know about it, the safety officer is guilty.
He must be
the
the
safety officer didn't speak up when he was supposed to speak up. So I will keep him accountable, although the engineer is going to pay the penalty.
But he's accountable in the operation.
He's going to be accountable with me, and I'm going to say, but you didn't do your job because you didn't bring this under my attention.
There was a few years back that you removed a safety officer from site due to him being ineffective in the safety systems.
And we must understand why the chief safety officer sits in. He's the only person from the mine that sits permanently in a fatality investigation. That just shows you how important that role is. And he's there because he's there for the safety system.
Yes.
So when I had my fatality, that was the only person that was permanently in the hearing.
Yeah.
And that person is so pivotal in ensuring that the people that's investigating this, as part of the investigating body, understands the evidence that's presented
and understand your system.
And understand the system. He's there to guide the team and say, no, wait, you missed this part of the system. The evidence is in the file, just you're missing it, you're not considering it. But at the end of the day, he's not there to defend the engineer.
He's there to defend the system.
He's there for the system.
Yeah. So one thing I want to put stretch on this one. If you are a safety officer and you're sitting there, if you look at PTOs, plan inspections, risk assessments, not only for yourself, for the supervisors, for the engineer, because the engineer has got high-risk verifications that he has to do, and he has to do his field VFLs, visible fault leaderships. So you are there to support them in compiling the system for you. They are the feeding factor towards you, and you update it as a safety officer if your organization is small, that you don't have administrators. So you must ensure that all of that stuff is filed, it's in an easily accessible place, and it's well back, documented. To say we have conducted 120 PTOs for the last 6 months. This is the kind of PTOs we've conducted. Same with the inspections. This is the deviations we found. This is what we closed out. Because when you have a DMR investigation or just a normal DMR inspection, they are going to look at the whole system, and they can give you a section 54, a mine stoppage due to a system failure. Everything is in order, but the system has failed. You have done PTOs, it's there in a file, but it's somewhere, and still they will give you a section 54 because on administrative you are lacking. So from your side, how do you feel about a safety officer on the administration side?
I'm going to tell you with an example of, again, the fatality that we went through. So the fatality happened on a Saturday morning, and we were given until 10 o'clock on the Sunday morning to submit all our evidence. Any evidence that was submitted after that had to be submitted with a letter of motivation why it was not submitted by 10 on the following day. And all the evidence that was submitted after 10 was not accepted in that instance. So how were we ever able to give the evidence within 24 hours, in files, done everything orderly, we were able to do that because our system was in place. Who did it? The safety officer took the lead. The safety officer, the person to say, that's there, that's there, that's there. And obviously there's teams now helping to make copies and putting everything in file. But he knows the system. He knows where it is. He can put his finger on it immediately.
He knows where the PTOs is filed.
Exactly. So he's the person that is probably the most knowledgeable of where it is in the system and where we can get it. Number one. Number two, the engineer. So I need to go and do my inspections. So let's go back to a production environment. As the engineer, where do I focus my attention as far as the production, the engineering part of my job? I look at the availability KPIs and I see my dozer section has got poor availabilities. So where am I going to focus my attention? I'm going to go to the dozer section. Safety is exactly the same. Where do I focus my attention? My safety officer, his inspections, his feedback tells me that's where my risk is. That's where I'm going to focus my attention. So the feedback I'm getting from the system that's driven by my safety officer is going to help me to identify where should I give most of my attention, because you have to manage by exception. Because you've got a big area, you cannot manage everything with the same level of attention. You have to see where's the problem area. So where safety is concerned, the safety officer, if his system is well oiled and it's accurate and it's properly maintained, it provides the guidance for me and the management to see where do we need to focus our attention.
That's perfect. Yes, I enjoy that one. So now I've got a question for you. If you look at a safety officer that's freshly out of school, out of college, or wherever he came from, if you look at the knowledge modules, practical modules, and then workbook modules, and this is why I like QCTO. QCTO is very structured versus the old health and welfare CETAs. I'm not talking bad about them, but they lack the last one for workplace workbooks. If you can remember, way back, safety officers had to be qualified artisans, and it changed throughout time to make it easier for people to get work. But now for you, what will you say a safety officer who's got all these versus somebody who just came out of school with no workplace experience, no practical modules? Remember, a practical module will simulate a lot of workplace areas, but it doesn't give you the actual experience. The area where you get your experience is the workbook logbook, the work area logbook. And that's why I really like QCTO. So with that one, what will you say? Which one will be better for you? Somebody who's got the workplace experience as well, under training, or somebody who's just done a short course? And then also, we cannot always just appoint people with experience. You must give people without experience the opportunity. And in this training, you actually get experience from the training provider. So how do you feel about that one?
So in many cases, safety, there's not a rule, an exact rule for every single situation. It's not. So a person that comes from college or wherever he was and he just did training, he's got theory. He needs a rule for everything.
Yes.
And even if he has a rule for everything, you need to make sure he knows when to apply what rule. And that's where experience comes in. So experience helps a person to put the link between the rule and the application. So there's a saying that says knowledge. So knowledge is something you get from books, but wisdom is the application of knowledge.
Yes.
So what is better, a knowledgeable person or a wise person? It's a wise person because he can apply the knowledge. Same with the safety officer. A safety officer without experience is like it's half of a solution. It's not a full solution. So if I have a car, I've got an engine, and I've got wheels, but I don't have a transmission, drivetrain, will that car move? It can be a racing engine with the best performance. It's not going to move. And that is how I would liken a safety officer that's got this course and he comes with a whole lot of certificates.
Yes.
He's a racing engine. He's got no drivetrain. He means nothing.
Yeah.
He's not going to add value. That guy needs to gain experience. So he needs to go back in a training environment.
Yeah.
He needs to be trained now to apply that knowledge, to build the transmission, the drivetrain, to get the car moving. So that's why the most valuable safety officer is normally a person that comes from line. It doesn't need to be an artisan, but he worked. He worked in a practical environment, and he identified as safety as a passion.
Yes.
And now he was trained, and he became a safety officer. But when he comes with his certificate, he already has experience. That guy is immediately going to make a difference. Yeah. He's immediately effective. He doesn't have that time period that he needs to be trained effectively. You cannot be an effective safety officer without experience.
And this is why I like UCTO, because they do not send you for your final assessment to write your ticket, if you want to call it that, to become a safety officer without a logbook. And the worst is they integrate that logbook. So now, this is the last question I've got. A safety officer. Do you see a safety officer as an overhead for operation, or do you see him as an important tool that yes, he's an overhead definitely, but do you see him as a tool that can safeguard your whole operation and help with your availability and your production because it's being worked correctly?
So I come from corporates, and it's corporates that were in the minerals business. So with big corporates, they're not allowed to sell their coal or their chrome or whatever it is, what commodity it is. They're not allowed to sell it if it wasn't produced safely. So access to the marketplace is dependent on safety record.
Okay.
Now that gives you the answer of where the safety officer sits. Safety officer is not a nice to have. It's a requirement. And it's a requirement because we're working under the Mine Health and Safety Act or the Occupational Health and Safety Act that says that as the employer, we must have systems in place to guarantee that people will work safely, that they will be in a safe environment, safe workplace, and they are able to perform their work safely. And that is why it's not optional. It's a requirement. It's part of operating cost. Without a safety officer, you cannot operate. And it's as simple as that. That's why it's a legal requirement. And it goes the same with safety reps. There is certain requirements when safety reps are needed. It's not an optional. It's a requirement. It's as important as the artisan doing the job. That role is just as important. You don't support him and create the environment for him to operate effectively. He's not going to be able to do his job.
I always say a safety officer must have a passion. He must be passionate about safety. He must not care about buying faces, having people liking him, because a lot of managers is not going to like a safety officer. And I know it as a fact. A lot of supervisors is not going to like a safety officer because he enforces rules. And the only reason why he does that is to ensure people go home safely. I personally believe if we have a safety officer that's committed to operation and gives his all to operation, I believe we can have zero harm. Not only zero fatals, but zero harm, because he is a key contributing factor to a safe system.
It's the same. Which teachers were your favorite teachers? It was the ones that had a passion for their subject. Same with safety officers. If a safety officer is there because they thought it was a job that pays a good salary, but they don't have a passion for it, you're not going to have an effective safety officer. A safety officer that's got passion for safety that passion will be transferred to the team, and eventually that passion will build in the team as well for safety. And then you have a successful safety officer. And you know what? That person will do a good job because he enjoys what he's doing.
Yes. So I always say a safety officer, I've seen it in the past. I've worked with a lot of safety officers, different operations. And I've always seen the safety officer who walks with a camera and doesn't speak to people and doesn't have that people interaction. He's not a competent safety officer in my opinion. He has the best experience, he's got the best training, but he's not competent because he doesn't know his people. He cannot see a risk that people's going to predict or going to do because you don't know what's going on with that person's life. So again, behavior-based safety. If you look at his behavior, you can identify Gerald has got issues. Call Gerald and speak to him, find out what's going on. Be the middleman, be his voice to his supervisor. Because again, people will come to you as a safety officer and speak to you. What is your risks and what is wrong at home and what's let's say money issues and so on. He doesn't trust the supervisor. But as a safety officer, he must be able to trust you because you are his person. You are his savior.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, Gerald, thank you so much. Thanks for the time. And again, it's been a few hours that you sat with me. I really appreciate you helping me to make the learners more, how can I say, aware of what is their responsibilities, their duties. And it's out of the mouth of an engineer. The next session will be from a chief safety officer point of view, same line of questions. So my aim is when you decide to become a safety officer and you do your training or PTOs and safety rep, you can see what's actually being required and expected of you as a safety officer. So you are the first step in making my course the best in the industry. So thank you for your time.
I'm glad I could contribute.
Thank you.
Thank you.